Howdy folks, today I got just more of a straightforward cocktail video for you. I got this new book, Cure. Got a couple topics to discuss. Let's go. So this book comes from a great bar in New Orleans called Cure. Auntie Susan is from New Orleans, and I've had the chance to go actually visit this bar, Cure. It's a really, really good bar. We had a great time while we were there. Actually met the owner briefly, Neil Bodenheimer. Seems like a fine fella. Now this book is full of recipes that they had on the menu at the bar. It's also got a lot of descriptions and stories from New Orleans and the New Orleans bar scene and the sort of unique local customs, let's say. The drinks in the book are broken down by style. So you'll have a Manhattan section, an old-fashioned section, martini section, a big section on sours, etc. And today's drinks are from the Negroni section. Now, one thing I will say about the book is that they do like to use a lot of sort of out-of-the-way ingredients, some sort of maybe slightly harder to find bottles. While I was flipping through the book, looking at recipes, trying to see if there was something fun I could make, I did several times run across the recipe that sounded really good, but I didn't have a particular bottle that I needed, so just so that you're aware. So the other thing that I noticed while flipping through the book is they love to do this sort of inverted proportions concept. In the Manhattan section, for example, there's several drinks that are more like 2 ounces of vermouth and 1 ounce of base spirit, things like that. Now this is a concept that I love. It's a great way to riff on a Manhattan, and there's a lot of good examples in this book. The drinks we're making today also sort of follow this concept. They're out of the Negroni section, but they're using Zucca instead of vermouth, and the proportion of Zucca is much higher than the one-to-one you're used to. So the first drink we're looking at is called Ghosts of My Life. Now, as you can see from the recipe, it is more Zucca, less Campari, but it's still sort of recognizably a Negroni, if you know what I mean. Now this recipe also leads me to another topic I want to discuss. They're measuring their bitters in drops, which I think is kind of awesome. Dashes are super inaccurate. Not only do different dasher bottles dispense a different amount, but depending on how full or empty a bottle is, more or less bitters will come out of any dasher bottle. So it's really hard to know how many dashes of bitters you're putting in your drink, but if you do it by drops, the droppers are a lot more accurate. So you do have to move all your bitters into dropper bottles and sort of convert all of your recipes, but I feel like it might be worth it, especially for a bar that's trying to be accurate. Anyway, the second drink we're gonna make is just a riff on the first drink called Ghosts of My Life number 2. It uses Bacanora instead of gin. So you can see what I mean about the book sort of calling for more obscure spirits. Bacanora is a pretty deep cut agave spirit. I'm gonna be using Mezcal for this because I don't happen to have any Bacanora on hand. Bacanora is basically a Mezcal that comes from Sonora. They have different agaves that they use in Sonora as opposed to Oaxaca, but essentially it's a Mezcal, so I'm just gonna use Mezcal instead. Now, I'm sure that Bacanora is delicious and has some various differences compared to Mezcal, but I don't have Bacanora, I've got Mezcal, so I'm gonna use it. Let's mix them up. of My Life. This is the one with gin. The Zucca obviously is very front and center. It's got a little bit of that extra bitterness from the Campari. The gin sort of disappears into the whole thing. I'm not detecting a lot of gin. I suppose a person could use a higher proof gin or like a more strongly flavored gin. But I mean, this is delightful. I love Zucca, so this is like not a hardship that it's Zucca forward to me. But let's try the Mezcal one. Ghosts of My Life 2. Also delicious. The Mezcal comes through a lot more. I feel like this drink needs a more potent base spirit to sort of cut through some of the sweetness of the Zucca. In the book it called for Plymouth gin, which I don't happen to have, so I was using a local Aria gin. I think of Plymouth as like a softer kind of gin, but I think actually a sort of bolder gin might be good in this. Anyway, this is delicious. And you know, the thing is, gin and mezcal are great substitutes for each other. If you haven't tried a mezcal, last word, you simply must. And we have a theory at work that goes like this. Gin sort of inserts itself into a drink where the elements sort of commingle, and I feel like that's what mezcal does as well. And that's like, as opposed to something like bourbon, which makes like a base for a drink that you sort of layer flavors on top of it. And so like bourbon, you could substitute cognac, for example. Cognac is a sort of base note, you know, a rich base note that you can put flavors on top of, whereas gin and mezcal sort of intermingle, and that's why they're good substitutes for one another. I hope that was fun and or informative. If this book sounds like fun to you, you should go buy it. It's good to support people who are putting out good content. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.